And Psalm 2. He knows Psalm 2. He's sung it in the synagogues. This is the Messiah who is the King of the whole world. Can we just quickly go to Mark chapter 13 and verse 32, which I take it Mustafa has taken understanding as an authentic verse, which goes back to Jesus. Jesus says, no one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Firstly, he's certainly putting himself above the angels there, because there's an ascending order. Nobody knows, no human being knows. The angels do not know. The Son, who is above the angels, he does not know. Only the Father knows. So that's the first thing. The first thing is, whatever else he does, he puts himself above the angels. Think that through. That, by the way, is the main reading, main manuscript reading in Matthew 24, verse 36. There's no difference there. So Jesus is putting himself above the angels. And in the incarnation, he emptied himself. He was in the form of God, says Philippians 2, but he emptied himself. And there was a genuine emptying there. Otherwise there would be no suffering. There'd be no hunger, there'd be no thirst, there'd be no getting tired, there'd be no sleeping on the boat, there'd be no dying on the cross. He has to empty himself of his divine glory without emptying himself of his divinity. And here on this earth, he does not know the date of the second coming. The one who is above the angels, in his incarnation, the Word becoming flesh, the one who suffers and bleeds and dies, who eats and drinks, who falls asleep, he does not know. That doesn't prove he's only a man, that proves he is true man. John's Gospel emphasises only 7 signs. His whole Gospel is written around these 7 signs, 7 miracles. And so you get longer discourses there. For example, in John 6, Jesus said, I am the bread of life, and you get the feeding of the 5,000 and so on with bread. You get a miracle and a discourse attached to the miracle, and that's the way John works. So you get, in the first 3 Gospels, you get these fairly clipped sayings, I suppose, but in John's Gospel, you get long discourses. And they're not saying anything different, they're just saying much more. If Jesus is the second last prophet before Muhammad, he's not a great communicator, because between his time and Muhammad's time, which is the 7th century, so you go about 600 years, who believed in Jesus did not believe that he was put to death and he rose from the dead. There is not a group that say, we believe in Jesus, but we don't believe he was crucified. It doesn't exist. So if he's a prophet, nobody understood him. The onus of proof is on the Christians, says Mustafa, that's fair enough. It's prophesied in the Old Testament Messiah would die. It's revealed in the New Testament he did die. And as the gospel goes out to both Jews and Gentiles, for example, the book of Acts, that's the 5th book of the New Testament, the assumption everywhere is that he died. There are some who don't believe that it's the Lord who died, and there are some who don't believe that he rose from the dead. But I don't think you'd find anybody who didn't believe that he died. That's taken as given. And then 600 years later, it's reversed. And suddenly, he didn't die. Somebody else has died. The reason why that's not even raised in the New Testament, because it's not an issue. Thank you.
Mustafa will now speak for 15 minutes. Rebuttal.
بسم billah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. There's a lot of issues to tackle, but I'll try to tackle as much as I can, inshallah. I want to first talk about, mention the prophecies in the Old Testament. And there was one prophecy, there was one verse which Peter Barnes mentioned. That's found in Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. Who was Emmanuel? Therefore, this is the verse here, therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. God is with us. And you notice the word virgin here. Now, the word virgin does not appear in the original Hebrew text. The word used is Alma, which is a young woman. So what our friends are saying is this prophecy was referring to Jesus, that the virgin will conceive. Obviously it's speaking about Maryam alayhi salam, and his name shall be Emmanuel, God is with us, referring to Jesus. Now, the Hebrew word for virgin is Bethula, forgive my pronunciation, B-T-H-U-W-L-A-H, phonetically spelt. When the Hebrew text is translated into Greek, it uses the word Parthenos, meaning young girl / virgin. The translators have mistakenly chosen the latter, virgin. In the RSV, the Revised Standard Version, they took out the word virgin and replaced it with young woman. Page 716 in the RSV. Biblical scholars have suggested that it was referring to a second or third son of Isaiah by a Jewish maiden. Notice also, it says his name shall be Emmanuel, not he shall be Emmanuel. There is a big difference between saying his name shall be God is with us, and between saying he shall be God with us. Names such as Ishmael, God is; Israel, Prince of God; Elijah, my God is Jehovah. It was very common amongst the Israelites. They knew that it did not mean that God will come down on earth, incarnate. The name Emmanuel could mean God be with us, in a sense, God help us. Okay, another prophecy, Peter Barnes mentioned Isaiah chapter 53. Okay, I've got a bit of a long answer. I don't know if you want to hear it, but but I think it's very important because this verse is used by our friends so often to prove Jesus dying for the sins of the world. Isaiah 53, as a prediction, Jesus is going to die for the sins of the world. Now what scholars are now finding is that the New Testament writings were written in order to show that Jesus fulfilled the prediction of Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 was not understood that way by Christians until the New Testament came in. It has been interpreted before New Testament came into existence. They, the Jews, did not see this referring to someone being crucified. They saw this as one of the servant songs. There are 4 of them. Isaiah 42, Isaiah 49, 50, 52 and 53. Who are the servants? The servants has been identified as in the servant song as Isaiah 49 as being Israel. Israel as a community, as a whole, being personalized and referred to as a servant of God. In fact, Israel as being the servant of God is so well known that even in the New Testament Gospel of Luke, Israel referred to as servant of God. It does not mean that Israel has to be crucified, but you must understand that the Old Testament contains some poetic writings which sometimes exaggerates for emphasizing certain issues. So if the Israelite people are feeling that way, they are suffering and they are trying to make some sense of this, and the song is now expressing that sentiment and emotion and saying it looks like the Israelite people are suffering for the sins of others. Because the Israelite people have the covenant, they are trying to keep it. Why are they still suffering? It looks like they're suffering for the sins of others. This is one of the interpretations which was very prevalent. So it's not referring to a particular individual. It was referring to the whole nation of the children of Israel. Hardly did anyone say this must be referring to future person. i.e. Jesus.